All right, welcome back to the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast. This is Brian. It is Tuesday night. I'm here with Adam Levitan. We're going over Wednesday's NBA slate. Adam, what's going on, man?
Yeah, this is Tuesday at like 7:30, and I still have like my heart going from that Tuesday lineup lock where we got late news on Durant and some later news on Thaddeus Young and Jeremy Lin. So yeah, that was a little stressful, but
Yeah,
yeah, I'm ready to look forward to tomorrow.
yeah, for sure. Always fun with late season NBA stuff. Which actually, we can use this to pitch. It reminds me, you did a great video today on our site about not only kind of using Fantasy Labs models, player models, kind of in your own way, which I agree is I think it's something that people don't do necessarily. They kind of just pick a model and optimize it and expect to do well. So you kind of talked about how you should create the model and make it your own, but you also kind of talked a little bit about late season NBA, which is always a fun part of the year, right?
Yeah, no, I like that's the thing. Like tonight, like you could look at Thomas Robinson's consistency rating on Fantasy Labs, but like that doesn't mean much when he's starting and
Mhm.
Thaddeus Young is out. Like it's just a totally different beast late in the year when like we're evaluating like Willie Cauley-Stein against Costa Koufos. Like,
Yeah.
we have to think about things completely different than we have been. So I've been trying to tweak the models that I use to kind of account for some of that, but it's hard. I mean, for sure, there's no right answer when you're like thinking about Thomas Robinson and Carl Landry and Chloe Stein. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's for sure like it's not black and white. It's for sure hard.
Yeah, and NBA is just kind of like that. Like in any other sport, like if I don't know, if a quarterback got injured, you would have one guy that comes in and plays quarterback for that entire game. It's like a it's like a one switch into one. Whereas
Mhm.
NBA is very different. Like DeMarcus Cousins was out, a little while ago. We kind of throw out this trend because we had looked up like who sees the biggest plus minus when bump when Boogie's out, and we found that it's actually Kosta Koufos actually usually sees the biggest plus minus bump. A lot of people, take Rudy Gay. They think that's the play. But then yesterday we had, Boogie was out, Rondo was out, Gay was out, and it's kind of just, NBA is just so hard. There's not 1v1. Um, it's not like one guy just fills in for another guy. All the guys kind of on the court are tethered together. They all play different positions, even on a single possession. NBA is just tough. The data is great, but on the floor, it's just kind of hard to interpret that data, especially late season.
Yeah, and unlike a lot of other sports, I do think there is like an advantage to watching like
Oh,
NBA
yeah.
games. Like, when we get to baseball, like you could go the whole season without watching a single baseball game and probably be better off for it. I think with NBA,
Mhm.
like watching somebody like Cauley Stein or Thomas Robinson could let you know like what's going to happen when they actually get minutes. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. It's gonna be a long 2 weeks, but I love it.
Yeah, and definitely exciting time for DFS in general. I mean, we got NBA still going on. We got Masters next week. We got MLB starting first games are Sunday, and then opening day Monday. I guess it's not that exciting if you don't play MLB or PGA, but a lot going on. So yeah, let's get into the games. We got 9 games, which actually isn't that bad. Usually Wednesdays are double digits, but yeah, we'll run through these games and give your thoughts on them. Let's dive right in. Atlanta at Toronto is the first game we'll hit on. Over under is 200 right now, and Toronto is 2-point favorite. Some quick injury news. Thabo Cephalosha is probable for tomorrow, and Terrence Ross on Toronto's side is questionable. He hasn't played in a couple games, so I'm leaning that he's probably doubtful. So yeah, I'll kick to you, Adam. Thoughts on kind of this game in general and the guys you're looking at?
Yeah, so I guess my first thought is I thought Jeff Teague was a really good tournament play last game. I think Jeff Teague's good
Mhm.
tournament play all the time
Yeah.
because he can play more minutes as he plays better, and that doesn't reflect in his salary. But that
Mhm.
was against the Bulls last game, and I thought that was just like the perfect spot to use him now. I think a lot of people will be back on him, and it's obviously a much tougher spot against Kyle Lowry. I mean, we're expecting Kyle Lowry to play here despite the kind of elbow issue he had last game, correct?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, so that would concern me about going back onto Teague. Two teams that I think are playing way better defense or playing among the league best defense lately. Maybe weren't there at the beginning of the year, but two teams that are really playing good defense lately. So I'm going to be super excited about anybody in this game. The guy that I think is sneaky, or at least was sneaky last game, and he kind of got lost in the shuffle with all the value, was Norman Powell. And with Terrence Ross out, he's been playing a ton, last 3 games, 39, 34, 28 minutes. And a talented guy that's actually playing well and earning the trust of his coaches. So at 3.5K, I mean, we have no idea what kind of value is going to open up, but Norman Powell would initially be a thought for me as one of the better value plays just off the top.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. He was the guy that I wrote down. And, we have in our models, we kind of have what a guy should hit based on his salary, kind of like their implied points. A guy 3.5 on DKs only needs to score about 14 points to hit value. And he's been over 25 in the last 3. So, I mean, you're seeing a plus minus of over 11 there, which would usually rate for about the highest in a slate. So, yeah, I think he's kind of a clear value. You're right about these two teams playing pretty good defense. So it's hard to get excited about a lot of these. In theory, Millsap, I think, is okay. He's just so consistent. I get that, Biyombo and JV are pretty good. Just kind of the defense for Toronto is pretty good in general. I think Millsap is fairly matchup proof. I wouldn't go him in cash at 8K, but I do think that he's an okay tournament plays, kind of lower ownership. But other than that, it's hard to get excited about a lot of the guys. Opponent plus minus says that you always want to target guys against Atlanta in the front court, but I don't really trust either Valanciunas or Biyombo to really get enough minutes to really exploit that. Are you kind of in the same boat?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Atlanta's one of the worst rebounding teams in the league, and they're undersized grossly. But I don't really play Valanciunas, and I certainly don't play Biyombo when Valanciunas is out there. So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, and so I really think that you're kind of looking at Millsap in tournaments, and then I guess you can talk yourself into maybe some of these other guys that still have elite ceilings. Kind of Lowry and some of these guys that have exceeded the matchup at times this year if you're kind of looking for low ownership. But I don't think there's a whole lot cash here other than potentially Norman Powell on DraftKings. Cool. Let's move on to the next game. Denver at Memphis. There's no line yet. Some injury news. Zebo is questionable. And Nurkic is questionable. He's officially day-to-day. So definitely monitor those two guys because they'll definitely kind of change the minutes for both teams' front courts. So Denver, Memphis, where are you thinking?
Yeah, so on Memphis, I mean, let's realize what they've faced lately. I mean, they had a home-and-home on Friday and Monday against the Spurs, and before that, they hadn't played since the previous Tuesday. So, since these guys have even been playable, to me, it's been more than a week. So they are way off people's radar. I think with Zebo out against Denver, I'm interested in JaMychal Green. He's no longer free like he was for a while, but he's going to play 25, 30 minutes and he's no longer facing the Spurs. And this assumes that Zebo is out. So, if that's the case, I think JaMychal is interesting. Whereas before it was he was starting and Zebo was out, but he was facing the Spurs.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think he becomes really interesting. He's probably the guy that I would look at, if Zebo's out. Again, kind of what we mentioned at the beginning of the pod, there's not really a one-for-one switch, but I do think that JaMychal would see the biggest jump if Zebo was to be out. On the other side, if Nurkic is out for whatever reason, or kind of just in general, we would expect, Fareed and Jokic to get the start. Fareed's been pretty up and down. He's always kind of an interesting tournament play. It's kind of weird. He crushed against Miami a couple of games ago and only really 26 minutes, getting really bad minutes, but put up 43 DK points against Miami. If either him or Jokic's minutes were to go up, are they interesting at all, or is it kind of eh?
Yeah, that's the thing about the Denver front court. Even when Fareed was out and Darrell Arthur was the chalk one night and he played 20 minutes there, and that's just the way it goes. I mean, Jokic never plays, it seems more than 24, 26 minutes. I don't trust using any of these guys really, and it's certainly not the best matchup. I mean, I know Memphis is a shell of themselves given all the injuries, but certainly not like a matchup I really want to attack that badly. So
Mm-hmm.
so much risk in the minutes. It's hard for me to really click on Fareed and Jokic. I mean, you could always say Jokic is a tournament play just because he's so good at basketball, but beyond
Yeah.
that, I'm not excited.
Yeah, this game's just ugly. These are just two really bad teams. A lot of that's because of injuries. I will say that, but not great teams and not a lot to play for. You kind of, I guess Memphis does, but I mean they're just so injured. It's hard to get really excited. To kind of sum up, how excited we are about kind of the DFS prospect of these guys. The highest salaried guy is in this entire game that you could probably roster tomorrow is Kenneth Faried, who in his last two games have gotten 22 and 15 minutes at 5.7. So there's just nothing really exciting. No guys that you want to lean on in cash, and no guys that even like really have intriguing enough ceilings. I mean, I guess you could Jokic or some of these guys who have shown that they are good at basketball and kind of trending up. But yeah, I mean, there's just not much there, I don't think. Okay, let's keep on going. Next game we'll touch on is LA Clippers, because LA Lakers are playing tomorrow. So the Clippers versus Minnesota, over-unders 212. And overall, in general, the totals aren't super high tomorrow. We do have a Golden State game, but they're playing Utah, so the over-unders fairly low. This, and it looks like Phoenix and Milwaukee is the next game we'll hit on. Those are the two highest total games, and they're just kind of barely above 210. Usually we have some of these West Coast games that kind of approach 220. So really not a whole lot of high totals. So this and the next game could be interesting. But anyway, total is 212, and the Clippers are 5.5-point favorites. Of injury news, Paul Pierce is doubtful. He got injured last game. And then this isn't really injury news, but just kind of keep on your radar. Blake Griffin has been cleared to play, but he's got to face that 4-game suspension for a bunch of
I love that. Like according to the Clippers, he's been cleared to play. Like, how do we know that he'd actually be back now? Maybe they just like came out with it 4 games before. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and might as well just get your 4-game suspension out of the way when you have 4 games left until you're cleared.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of a sketchy situation. But yeah, so I think he looks like he's going to be back on the 3rd. 4-3 is the game that we're looking at. But nothing really notable except for Pierce being out. So Clippers, Minnesota, the highest total so far. Might be a good place to find some guys.
Oh, I mean, Minnesota has been like a DFS player's dream for the last month because they play their 5 starters like 32 to 36 minutes every single game, and that includes really productive fantasy players like Towns and Rubio, and Towns and Rubio especially have been underpriced on draft of the last month. So I've been playing Towns and Rubio like every night, regardless of matchup, and I'm certainly not going to stop now. Assuming we get enough value to open up. I know Towns' price has gone up to 8.4. That's still way too
under
for really one of the best players in the league. So so certainly those guys. I mean, how do we feel about wing players against the Clippers? Not that I care that much, because I think Wiggins and I've always, the last couple months preferred Wiggins because I think they run plays for him, whereas Levine kind of has to pull up and transition to get his. But I think Wiggins I would lean more towards. But what do you think about DVP in terms of wings there?
As far as like Minnesota versus the LA guys?
Yeah, exactly.
So DVP says it's a little low average. So it's not great. Andrew Wiggins has a opponent plus minus of negative 0.19. So obviously 0 is kind of the middle point that we're looking for. Levine's kind of in that same boat. Presumably they both play a lot of shooting guard, especially lately. So not a great matchup. Nothing that I think that you're going to like really, really have to target. Rubio's kind of in the same boat. So I don't think it's guys that you're like stressing to get in your lineup solely because of opponent plus minus. But I think at this point, just because of their minutes upside and really their talent upside. I mean, we saw Wiggins, what he could do last game, just kind of put together like a really well-rounded performance, did a lot of peripheral stats. Like I can understand not going Wiggins and maybe even Rubio against CP3 in cash games, but I think that you have to have pretty significant exposure to these guys in tournaments. And I think Cat is even at 8.4 is severely underpriced, and he's great really in any contest format.
Yeah, I mean, Cat is really something. He's going to be like a top 5 DFS player for the next like 15 years. It's really amazing.
It's incredible. Yeah, I was just watching him play, and it just kind of reminded me of. I just thought like. Like we're going to be looking at these highlights in like 15 years and be like, wow, remember when Cat was like 19 and crushing, kind of like we look at like old Tim Duncan highlights as like, remember, a top 5 guy. Yeah. It's kind of amazing just how good he is at 19 or 20 years old. It's incredible.
Yep, exactly. He's so sick. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I have, if anybody played any of the 5 starters for the Wolves, I would have no problem with it. My favorites would be, Towns and Rubio, but I certainly have no problem with Wiggins, and I'd probably put the other 2 kind of a step below. And then on the other side, I mean, Minnesota plays at a fast pace. They're not great defenders. How motivated are the Clippers right now to win games, do you think? I mean, they're virtually locked into the 4 spot. I mean, them and the Thunder basically have nowhere to go whatsoever. It's almost certainly going to be Clippers versus Grizzlies in the first round, with the Clippers having the home court advantage. So that, when I'm looking at a slate at this time of year, I guess that weighs on my mind a decent amount.
Yeah. So my thoughts on that is that for another team, I think that matters. I don't think it necessarily matters for the Clippers that much. Like the guys that we're obviously interested in here are DeAndre and CP3, right? And kind of speaking for DeAndre, and really, I guess for CP3 too, like, are their minutes going to be a little abbreviated? Potentially so. I mean, DeAndre looks kind of pulling up his game. Like he got 29 the last couple, barely over 30 in the game before that, and still just crushed value. So is he going to have minutes abbreviated? Probably so. And same with CP3, but does it necessarily matter that much? I don't think so. Maybe it matters enough where you're a little worried. Maybe you lean Towns in cash over DeAndre if you're going center. I definitely understand that. But if kind of going tournament or you want to get 2 centers on DraftKings, I still think there's a lead upside for both of those guys.
Yep. No, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I guess it's just more like a comfort thing for me, like with playing guys like James Harden and John Wall, who were just like 40 minutes every night these days.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. And for that reason, I can understand, getting off of them in cash. And there's really no reason. I mean, like you got, like for DeAndre, you got Cat that's just right above me. I think you got to pay an extra $400 or so to get Cat. And I think that's a pretty easy play. And then for CP3, you just got to go up $400 to get to John Wall in Sacramento. So that's kind of a no-brainer as well. So I don't think you have to go them. I think that makes them actually really intriguing tournament plays because I think they're going to be low owned. But yeah, for sure in cash, I think you probably do better. And anyone else on LA? You want to move on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I ever really. Maybe I mean I play Reddick in my first quarter DFS league, but besides that, I don't really play.
Yeah, first quarter DFS that would be kind of fun actually. Okay, let's keep on moving. Phoenix at Milwaukee. This is kind of the next highest total game that I think we can target. 211 is the 211 and a half actually is the total. Milwaukee is 6.5 point favorites, and don't really have any injury news. Obviously, we know of the season-long injuries to these teams, but nothing really new that we've seen the last little bit. Yeah, so I have some pretty good takes here, but I'll kick to you first.
Well, I mean, Devin Booker plays 40 minutes and he's awesome, and he gets assists and steals and rebounds. It's not, the most ideal matchup I've ever seen for him, but I mean, what's he cost now? Did he go up a lot? I don't even know.
No, he's a 6'7".
Yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, Devin Booker, God, I mean, he's just, I can't believe he's 19 years old too. It's so insane.
Yeah, he's the youngest player in the NBA, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. And yeah, so certainly I'm on Devin Booker. And then like we've talked about on here a bunch of times before, I don't know, I think we talked about it on here, but either way, like once Brandon Knight got hot, we knew that he was just going to erupt, and it happened finally in that last where how many he ended up with. He really ended up with 43 DraftKings points. I don't know how, because he had 30 points in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, he played 32 minutes, not kind of his usual. I mean, he had been approaching 40 before that, and then stayed down kind of in the 32 range. Yeah, hit 7 threes, kind of slowed up a little at the end, but yeah,
Yeah.
crushing it. Yeah, no, I agree. Those both him and Booker are severely underpriced. Booker's interesting actually because coming out of college, the knock on him was that he could be a potentially good shooter in time, but he wasn't going to get any peripheral stats. He was not a good defender. Was never going to get you any assists. Kind of like what we expect out of Klay Thompson. And what we get out of Klay. I mean, Klay had 40 points without an assist the other night against the 76ers.
Yeah.
And Booker was supposed to be kind of Klay 2.0, but Booker recently has been, doing well in a lot of his peripheral stats. I mean, he's had at least 4 assists in the last couple. And I think he's shown that, he's not just a scorer. He's obviously a great scorer. There's definitely no doubt about that. I mean, he's had 20 points in the last several, playing 40 minutes. Can stroke it. But he also can, get you some steals and some assists as well, which kind of, I think not only increases his ceiling, but also increases his floor. I think he's kind of a no-brainer.
Totally agree. Yep. Yeah. I mean, those Phoenix guys are just a credit to Phoenix for just like rolling the ball out there and letting Devin Booker play 40 minutes because that's how you develop a play.
Yeah. No. Exactly. So on the other side, I think the player that we need to kind of work our way through and what we think about him is Giannis, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So Giannis, the guy who just kind of plays all positions. Recently, I don't know if you saw this, kid announced that he was going to be the starting point guard for the Bucks next season. He already announced that, which is
so weird, but yeah.
Yeah, a very Jason Kidd thing to do. But yeah, so this is kind of what so I'm battling here, and I kind of want your thoughts on it. All right, so the best opposing plus minus in the entire slate tomorrow is Tyler Ennis and Jared Bayless against Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we love getting point guards against Phoenix. So Giannis's plus minus isn't amazing. It's not bad. It's a little over +1, but it's not like approaching +7, which is easily the highest. So theoretically, a point guard against Phoenix is the position we want to take. So knowing that opponent plus minus for guys against Phoenix point guards, and knowing that Giannis is primarily going to play point guard, does that bump him up for you, or I'm just not really sure who's going to defend him? Is what I'm asking.
The answer is yes. It makes me want to play him more, that he is going to be on the ball and he's facing Phoenix, who has been nothing short of inept against ball handlers all year. Like, you don't have to think of it as point guard, shooting guard, small forward. You just think of it as ball handler. I mean, they give up penetration like it's nothing. So yeah, and it's a coincidence, or it's a good coincidence for us, that Giannis's price has come down to 9.3 after getting as high as 9.8 as recently, like as a week ago, for this matchup. So I think Giannis will be very popular tomorrow, and with very good reason. I mean, if you look at his game log, it's not that good for somebody who costs 9.3, and hopefully that keeps people on him, because I expect him to just destroy.
I do too. Yeah. He's one of my favorite plays. A lot of it is because of the opponent plus minus. A lot of it's because I think that he's, I think, and kind of the same thing with some of these other guys like Middleton and even Jabari a little bit. If there's ever a spot to bounce back, Phoenix kind of cures a lot of those ailments. So, Milwaukee hasn't been playing that well lately, for sure. But I think this is a great spot to bounce back. And I hope people are going to be, recency bias game log checking on all those guys, because I think that would, bump their ownership percentages down. And I think that a lot of these Milwaukee guys are going to crush, especially Giannis.
Yeah, I mean, Milwaukee as a whole has had really tough schedule lately. I mean, Charlotte, Atlanta, Cleveland, Detroit, Utah, Memphis, Toronto. I mean, that's their last 8 games.
That's brutal.
I mean, that's as tough as it gets for them. So I mean, this is just like a floodgates opening kind of spot for a team that plays way, way better at home anyways.
Yeah, agreed. So I think there's a lot of great plays. Definitely Knight and Booker, but then a lot of these Milwaukee guys at the top as well. So I think you can find some both cash and tournament options there. Okay, let's keep on moving. New Orleans at San Antonio is the next game we'll touch on. There's no line here. Some injury news. New Orleans, I'm not sure has any players left. Drew Holiday is out for the season with his eye injury, which is pretty brutal. Rhino is out for Wednesday, and he's probably out for the season. They haven't announced it yet for sure, but all the rumblings in New Orleans are that he's going to be out. Kind of no need to rush him back or anything. It's kind of a lost season at this point. Norris Cole's day to day, and then on San Antonio side, Kawhi is probable.
And Alonzo G is out for the year as of today, also.
Yeah. So New Orleans. Is there anyone on DraftKings that you can still roster? Is I guess the question we'll start with.
I mean, first of all, when this line comes out, it could be the biggest line of the season. Like I saw the
spread-wise,
Warriors were favored by 21 against the Sixers on Sunday. Like this could be 20. I mean, they have no players. I mean, they legit have no players. Like who are they going to start? Like it's probably be like either Frazier or Douglas, or maybe both. Babbitt, Cunningham, Insa, Ashik.
Yeah.
And then they'll come off the bench with like Kendrick Perkins and Jordan Hamilton, who they just signed. I mean, I don't know, man. Like they're going to get absolutely throttled. How much is like Tony Douglas is somebody that I'm usually okay with. I just don't know if I want to play him against the Spurs when it's going to be so hard for him to get assists because there's nobody for him to pass to. 4.9. Like, honestly, I'm going to try to play no Spurs, and it's going to be tempting because like Tony Douglas and Frazier and Babbitt and Cunningham are probably all going to play 30 to 35 minutes, maybe more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try not to do it. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, they're going to obviously be really popular because anytime you can get a guy, and really you can get like 3 or 4 guys, at minimum price, and know they're guaranteed 30 minutes. Like we talked about before with these guys that are like 3,000 to 3,500. I mean, their implied points is like 11 points to hit value, and it's like how can they not hit value? Like honestly, this might be like the research study. Like can 4 guys all with $3,000 price not hit value? I think it's possible here. Yeah, it's always tough because when all these guys are out, it's a lot of people just automatically jump on the guys filling in as like, okay, these are going to be value guys. These are guys I have to get in without thinking, okay, what's it actually going to do to the game? Is it going to just make the game unplayable? And I think that's probably going to be the case. Yeah, I mean, it could be a 40-point game where there's just nothing going for really either team.
Did you mention Spurs guys resting? Like, did they already declare out some guys?
Not that I've seen.
Okay, because if they haven't yet, I would have guessed that they're going to rest guys in this spot.
Yes, they're playing a D-League team. Yeah, might as well. Yeah.
Right. So like it could be another Boban night. Like Boban had 20 FanDuel points the other night in his start. He didn't even play well. So it could be another Boban night. Like I didn't play Kyle Anderson the other night, and I don't like rostering him, but like people played him against me in cash the other night, and he was awesome. I think I'm way more interested in the Spurs side.
Yeah, I think the play is to wait and kind of see what the Spurs do as far as resting guys, and if they do, I think you load up on them. Yeah, I think that's the play here. I agree. Whether it's Boban or Anderson or whoever it may be, Kawhi's probable, but you're right. They might just decide to give them the. I mean, they're playing New Orleans, which is kind of funny because last year at this time, New Orleans, San Antonio were playing New Orleans. Brow hit that last second 3 to get in the playoffs, and now this could be the largest spread of the season, just a year later between the 2 teams. Which actually, I looked it up while you were talking. The largest spread this season was 22. The Warriors at the 76ers just the other night.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, like the Duncan, Ginobili, Parker crew would be the people most likely to sit, I would guess.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts. I agree on that game. Let's keep on going. New York Dallas is the next game we'll hit on. We got 4 games left. 201 is the total. Dallas is 5-point favorites here. Just kind of quick injury news. Nothing. Not a lot here, but Darren Williams is going to be out. So kind of same as last game with Berea and Felton kind of picking up his minutes. So yeah. So this game, what are you looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I got really lucky the other night. I thought Barea would start again, and he was super low owned on FanDuel, and he ended up coming off the bench, and I thought I was dead, and then he ended up going for like 35 fantasy points, which was just
Yeah, he went insane. Yeah,
yeah,
11 assists. Yeah,
off the bench. So I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's going to be a Felton night or a Barea night or a Wes Matthews night. I mean, we saw Dwight Powell come in and have a good game, and I'm having trouble just sitting here not confusing Nathan Powell and Dwight Powell, but I like
right.
both those guys to be in play, like it's just getting wild. So I never really have a good handle on the Mavs. I was really surprised that Dirk did not have a better game against Denver.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting bounce back spot for him. I mean, absolute must win for the Mavericks. Continue to be right there on the cusp of the Western Conference playoffs. So he could play 33 minutes, got 17 shots up, only made 4 of them against Denver. Would expect him to obviously play way better against the Knicks. So I like Dirk. I mean, what do you think about the guard situation? Like, can we play Felton, Barea, Westmat anymore?
Yeah, I mean, so the price is up a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I think so. Like, even if, I mean, I think they're all probably a little they're pretty fair price. They're probably all a little underpriced. I mean, it's not like, like Felton and Barea weren't playing at all with Darren in. I mean, they're all kind of getting minutes, and they play a lot of 2-point guard lineups or whatever. We move west to the kind of the small forward spot, especially they're kind of just mixing it up like crazy. I mean, Salah Mejri is playing a lot. I mean, yeah, Dallas's rotation is kind of crazy. Yeah, I'm honestly fine with kind of all 3. I probably don't have the stones to roll them in cash, but I'm fine with them in tournaments for sure.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, Felton is a shooting guard, so like that is somewhat more intriguing to me. I mean, Berea's up to 5K. I mean, I'm not playing Barea for 5K off the bench against the Knicks. For sure. I mean, Felton's starting at 4K at 4.6, I guess, but I'm not that excited about that. I mean, I think Devin Harris coming back, really kind of threw them for a loop there. So just, my first instinct is that Dirk at 7.1 is probably my favorite play on the Mavs in this spot.
Yeah, I like Felton quite a bit. I mean, if he's going to start and he's gotten over 30 minutes in the last couple games, he's still at 4.6. And I mean, we kind of know New York's, how they defend point guards with Calderon and all these guys. So I'm okay with Felton, but I can understand the hesitation for sure. And then on New York side, kind of before we move on, I think it's kind of the same old plays. Melo probably fairly priced. He's just kind of been fairly priced. He's actually pretty consistent. I'm not sure the upside is like super high. If we're kind of comparing him to maybe Giannis or some of these other guys, kind of in the 9K-ish range, but very consistent. And then Porzingis, obviously, his salary really isn't caught up to his late season resurgence, so he's kind of an obvious play here.
Yeah, I mean, Porzingis has been playing so many more minutes lately, and superstars at the end of dead seasons scares me. I actually played Carmelo in cash on Monday, and I mean, he had 33 DK point or 33 FanDuel points. Like, he was okay.
He didn't kill you, sure,
but not like anything spectacular. So. Yeah. It's just like there's not a lot of motivation for Carmelo right now, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, why kind of bust it? That's not really has been his MO, and kind of a late season game on the road at Dallas, nothing to play for. Yeah, Porzingis, I think, is the play. I'm okay with some Rolo as well, some Robin Lopez.
I'm always okay with some Rolo, man.
Yeah, no, I love Rolo in tournaments. He's one of my favorite tournament centers. He'll go off for 50 DK points like every once in a while, and so I throw in a Rolo lineup every time he's playing and just like hope that it happens.
Dude, he's good. Like, Rolo, the
Yeah.
gap between Brooke and Robin is closing, daily.
Yeah. I don't think it was ever really big in the first place, but yeah, for sure. I get that, especially in DFS land for sure.
Right.
Um, okay, let's keep on going. Golden State at Utah is the next game we'll hit on. Total here is 205. Golden State is 5.5 point favorites, so pretty close spread here, especially for Golden State. Of note, Golden State is playing tonight, being Tuesday, so they are on a back-to-back at Utah in their stingy defense, obviously slow pace as well. So that obviously factors into both the total and the spread here. Injury news: Iggy is still out. Festus Cecilia is still out. Brandon Rush is questionable for tonight, and they haven't played yet as of recording this pod. So I would say that his status for tomorrow, being Wednesday, probably depends on what happens tonight with him. So monitor that for sure. So yeah, Golden State, Utah, obviously not a great spot here for Golden State. If we're kind of looking at these elite guys that we usually like to roster for Golden State, it's very, very slow pace. You kind of like comparing the pace between the two teams. Yeah, not great for Golden State, but kind of elite talent that maybe they could rise above.
I would venture to guess this is the lowest total for a Golden State game all year, right?
Oh yeah, keep on talking.
It has to be. 205 is just so low for them, and the Jazz are so motivated right now. So yeah, it's certainly a scary spot. I really doubt I would use Golden State players in cash at all, just because their price reflects totals that are in the 220 to 230 range, like they're in every single night. I mean, that said, you can see if you go to FantasyLabs and you look, sort Steph Curry's plus minus by spreads, as the spread gets tighter. I mean, his plus minus just spikes massively. So, you're kind of weighing both sides there, but playing guys in Utah is just not something that I do, especially when they cost, 10K and are on a back-to-back.
Yeah, for sure. So looking here, so Golden State had 2 games lower than this against Utah back in November. The total was 201.5, and back at like the third game of the year, they played Memphis, and the total was 199. And I'm actually in the trend section. We can kind of see how they did. Draymond beat value in both. Steph beat value in both. Clay missed value in one of the two. So actually didn't super affect them. Definitely hurt the value of some of these kind of lower tier guys, as you would kind of expect. But Steph kind of rose above. He had 50. Yeah, he went for over 50. So I still think that the upside's there, which isn't like a hot take that Steph has upside in any matchup. But yeah, I mean, it is a tough spot. So I can understand, especially, I mentioned before, John Wall is kind of in that same range. So you can save $300 and get John Wall against Sacramento in what I would expect to be a kind of a pretty high total game. It's probably going to be the highest total game once the line comes out. But yeah, so I think that it's kind of maybe take these guys in tournaments and see what happens for Golden State. On Utah side, how are you feeling about those guys?
Yeah, I was encouraged that, Gordon Hayward had a dreadful first half on Monday, but I was encouraged that they let him stay out there when they were like up by 40 on the Lakers, because it says to me that they're not worried about his plantar fasciitis. So, you could chalk up that Lakers game as somewhat of a fluke. I always like playing Gordon Hayward. I think he's underpriced drastically on DraftKings. I mean, 6.9 is just too cheap for him, even in a relatively tough matchup with Golden State. So, yeah, I like him. I mean, Shelvin has been continuing to play a ton, and Favors is just so important to them, too, as they make this playoff push. I know Rodney Hood had like 30 points in the first half on Monday. That's just –
This is the Lakers, though.
Yeah, I would not be on Rodney Hood.
Yeah, I agree. I think kind of both sides are cash plays. I think potentially Gordon is fine, just because of he is severely underpriced. and has just played well. So I agree that he would be the cash guy I'm looking at. But yeah, I think a lot of these guys are intriguing. I think Mac is interesting. He's obviously up at 6K, but Golden State, if there's kind of a spot we like to target, Golden State's kind of a point guard in terms of kind of opponent plus minus. And I think actually Gobert is really interesting as well. Obviously these guys continue to be out of Zealy and Iggy and some of these front court guys. And Gobert can kind of, cause destruction against any front court, let alone kind of an injured one. So he's been playing really well. And I get it's Golden State, but at only 5-6, I like his upside potentially in tournaments. I think he'll be low owned because he on DraftKings the opponent rank is first, which means it's the worst in terms of DraftKings points allowed. But his opponent plus minus, kind of the way he's been playing lately, it doesn't necessarily match up to that. So I think he could be a pretty sneaky tournament play.
Agreed.
Cool. All right, let's kind of move on. 2 games left, and this next one I think is going to be one that we are definitely interested in. Washington at Sacramento. No line here as of yet. Washington's coming off of back-to-back. They're playing tonight, so that probably is why we don't have a line yet. Also, probably because we don't have a line is DeMarcus Cousins is questionable. Obviously did not play last game. They kind of – it's a little tricky. They hinted that it was only because of rest, but then they kind of later hinted at that he wasn't going to play anyway. So it's kind of hard to, I think, get a good read on, what we expect tomorrow. I think it's going to be something that, hopefully we'll have an answer before pretty early, but it could be something where you have to set your lineups without that knowledge, which is always tough. And then of note, Alan Anderson's questionable. Marco Bellinelli is probably he's technically questionable. I would say he's a little more doubtful than questionable. Obviously, the big boogie being the main one for sure.
And we're expecting Rondo and Rudy Gay to be back, correct?
I would expect so. Yeah. The boogie is the one that I think could potentially be out. They were all out for rest, but Boogie is the one that they kind of hinted that he wasn't going to play anyway because of this injury that's been kind of nagging him a little bit. So he's the one that really worries me.
Yeah. Well, let me start with the easy side, the Wizards. I know they're on a back-to-back. I expect them to put a lot into tonight's game against the Warriors, but, they literally, can't lose the rest of the season. So no matter what happens tonight, I expect them to come out with plenty of conviction in, arguably the best possible matchup. Sacramento leads the league in pace and it gives it the most raw points in the league. So, as the Wizards have tightened their rotation to the point where Gortat and Wall and Porter and Keefe when he plays and Beal when he plays, all these guys are playing 30, 35 plus minutes. It's like, I want to roster just about all of them. You couldn't talk me off of every single one of the Wizards starting lineups in this spot.
Yeah, I think Wall is kind of the easiest play of the night. There's no way I'm not going to play him in cash. He's just incredible plus opponent plus minus. Been crushing lately. He's going to play a lot of minutes. They're playing for their playoff lives. It's kind of the perfect storm of a guy who's going to go for 50 DK points. So I think that he's kind of as sure as it gets. So he's definitely in my lineups. Gortat, I actually really love as well. If Boogie plays, I can understand kind of pivoting off him because of the potential foul trouble. I always just get a little scared playing centers against Boogie just because, you can get them into foul trouble pretty easily. If he was out and Gortat was going against Koof and Willie Cauley-Stein, as much as I like both of those guys and respect them, I would be really interested. Gortat is 6'8" and playing heavy minutes, and if he wasn't in kind of that foul trouble situation, I think he's an elite play at center. I think he would probably be my favorite one if I was pivoting down from Cat for Minnesota. So those are my thoughts. And then I think you could go tournament with some of these other guys. It's kind of hard to predict minutes. Which one's going to get 35 minutes, one of them. So whether it's Porter or, what Beal is going to look like, or Keith's been a little up and down lately. But I definitely think you could talk yourself into tournament teams for those guys. Sacramento's side, yeah, so I think it actually makes it a little interesting. Like if Boogie's out, like we said, like Kufa, I think is interesting. Even Willie Cauley-Stein, they've both been playing high minutes. If he's in, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to not play Boogie if he's in, but like, oh God, like he's banged up. They have nothing to play for.
Yeah. He hates his coach.
Oh, hates. I mean, hates is an understatement. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I would have to start working on rosters, but like, I would 100% rather play John Wall than DeMarcus Cousins, right?
Yeah, easily for sure. Yeah, that's a no-brainer for me.
Okay, so yeah, and like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of expecting him to miss. So I mean, if he misses, it's like, yeah, I'm probably playing Kufus, and I would not be opposed to Cauley-Stein either, and I would not be opposed to Rondo. The guy that I'm probably not playing is Rudy Gay, who we've talked plenty about how doesn't really get a bump when Cousins is out for whatever reason. You could argue that he's missed a lot of open shots, and maybe that's the case, but it just doesn't seem like he is engaged really and really lacking confidence in his shot right now. So, yeah, we really have to watch the injury news here. And Sacramento guys have been good about getting stuff from shoot around. So hopefully we get some good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. That's going to be the thing to monitor. I think you lock in Wall regardless, but yeah, definitely monitor Boogie for sure because he's going to kind of dictate the slate whether he's in or out. Okay, last game we'll hit on before we kind of do the position quick hits and then get out of here. Miami at LA Lakers. Total is 207.5. Miami is 10-point favorites here. And of injury note, Dragic traveled with the team. He's still technically questionable, but the fact that he traveled with the team, same as Justice Winslow, kind of hinted optimistically at the fact that they would suit up. So it's something to monitor, but I would potentially think that they're going to be more probable than questionable here. So, yeah, last game, Miami at LA, kind of diametrically opposed teams, slow-paced defense first team against fast-paced, I guess you can call them an offense team, not really either, LA team. Is this interesting on either side, really?
Yeah, I mean,
maybe.
Yeah, no, I think that, like the Dragic thing, you're probably right if he plays. If he doesn't, then it's like all the Josh Richardson because they really don't have a backup point guard, and Josh Richardson fills so many roles for them. He was already playing a ton, and then with Dragic out, he has to play 30, 35 minutes. So for sure on that, if Dragic, is active, I think he's at least somewhat interesting. And I Dwayne Wade to me is a guy I really prefer to play when Dragic is out. But I'm not completely against him either. And then, Whiteside is very expensive, right? Like not expensive.
He's at A4.
Relative to centers, like he's more expensive than Cat, or is the same as Cat.
Same price, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd be hard pressed to play him over Cat, but I mean Whiteside is just such a
beast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Whiteside, I think, is actually probably my favorite tournament play of tomorrow. For that exact reason. I mean, I think he has elite upside. I mean, this guy could, we kind of just look through his game log and see some of the games he's put up this year. I mean, he is elite upside, even in the kind of lower 30-minute. So I think that he's going to be just so low owned because he's the same price as Cat. I mean, no one's going to kind of look at those two guys and pick Whiteside very often. So I think it's going to just torpedo his ownership percentage, which means I love him even more as kind of a tournament player. I actually kind of really like the strategy of going both in tournaments. I definitely rule out 100 lineups with them both because they're both expensive and it kind of makes your lineup weird. But I think with a couple lineups with them and kind of see if you can get some value plays elsewhere and kind of pay up for centers, I think that's going to be a unique lineup and potentially interesting in tournament. So I love him for sure. And then Dragic and Wade, I think it's kind of the usual suspects kind of for both teams that you could look for in tournaments. But I don't think there's a whole lot exciting here, cash-wise.
I mean, I'd be hard pressed playing Lakers. I mean, I think Julius Randle has been like one of the best cash plays for a while now, just because he's been so solid. But in this matchup,
Yeah,
it's
you
tough.
just don't. Yeah,
And with Kobe playing and taking usage and shot attempts for no reason, like it's just tough.
yeah.
So yeah, I probably won't end up with any Lakers.
Yeah, I think if you want to, get some tournament exposure to Randall and think that he can get over the matchup, which Miami is about the toughest in the league, especially in the front court. Go for it. But yeah, definitely not something I can endorse as a great cash game play or anything. Okay, let's finish there. Let's do our position quick hits now. And I will start with point guard, and I'll do small forward and centers, and then I'll let you do shooting guard and power forward, and we'll kind of rotate through and finish it quickly here. So starting with point guard, Steph Curry's at the top here at 10-3. I think he's a tournament play, mostly because John Wall is right below him at 10K on DraftKings, and he's just in this elite matchup against Sacramento. I think he is one of the easier cash game plays. I think you could start with him. Your cash game lineups and kind of figure out where you want to go elsewhere. At 10K, I think he's easy. He's going to crush. He's in a back-to-back, but Sacramento sucks against point guards, and he's going to play 40 minutes and destroy. So definitely play John Wall. Chris Paul, I think, is interesting. We talked LA may not have a whole lot to play for. They're kind of locked into their seeding. They're kind of looking ahead. Not a great game against Minnesota. But I think Chris Paul still has a lead upside in his matchup. So, as a kind of a pivot down from Wall and Curry and still trying to get maybe an ownership discount with still a lead upside if he gets 32 minutes for whatever reason. I don't mind him in some kind of small tournament exposure. Lowry is tournament only for me. Been struggling, potentially dealing with an injury, so definitely takes him out of cash. We've seen kind of a lead upside. Not the greatest game in terms of spread compared to some of these other guys we just talked about, but okay with him in tournaments. Rondo, I think, is okay in tournaments as well. I actually think I like him a little bit better if Boogie's in, just because he has more assist opportunities. But I think he's all right in tournaments. He's probably underpriced at 7-6 compared to his upside in tournaments. But yeah, I think it's okay. Brandon Knight, I think, is kind of an elite play here at 7-3. Kind of showed where he can be last game. Really played well and didn't necessarily get his full minute allotment. So I think he's a great play. And Rubio in that same range, I think it's an elite cash game play as well. So if you want to get off of John Wall, or you just kind of like your roster construction and want to go down a little bit, I think Knight and Rubio at the 7-3, 7-2 is kind of where you want to look. Going down, I think Dragic is interesting if he ends up playing in tournaments. Shove and Max kind of a sneaky tournament play. Golden State's kind of not great against point guards data-wise, so I think I don't love the 6K price range, but they're playing a tight rotation. I think that he's fairly interesting in tournaments. Jeff Teague, we saw his ceiling last game. I think he might be a little points chasey. Ownership's going to be high, so I can understand both playing him in tournaments and fading him. So make that call yourself, I think. And then kind of going down, I don't think it's there's really other many guys. I think it's probably a night to get a stud point guard, whether it's Wall or Rubio or whoever. JJ Barea, I think, is maybe interesting in some tournaments if you think he's going to get kind of the minutes that you think he's going to off the bench. Probably Felton's going to start instead of Darren Williams, but if you want to go that route, that's fine. Tony Douglas, if you want to try to figure out New Orleans against San Antonio, be my guest, but I'm not going that route. Same with Tim Frazier for New Orleans, kind of getting down into like the bargain bin for point guards. Really nothing here that I'm interested in. Yeah, that's it for point guards. I think it's definitely looking at Rubio Knight range or get up to Wall, which is what I think I'll be doing. So that's it for point guard. I'll kick to you for shooting guard.
Yeah, I'll start at the bottom, and I think the cheapest I would go at shooting guard is Nathan Powell of the Toronto Raptors, and that would only be if Terrence Ross were out. But I think Powell is an NBA player, like legit NBA player, and I think the coaches see that. So at 3.5K, if Terrence Ross is out, I think Powell makes a lot of sense. I think the next cheapest guy I would go to would be Raymond Felton, and I don't love him at 4.6 considering Barea is playing so well and considering Devin Harris is active. But with Darren Williams out, expect Raymond Felton to start at point guard again, and he has shooting guard eligibility on DraftKings, which obviously makes a big difference. Josh Richardson, if Goran Dragic is out, I'm playing Josh Richardson because he's going to play 35 plus minutes. Like, they don't have a choice because they have no real backup point guard outside of Josh Richardson, who is kind of a swing man anyway. So at 4.7, if Dragic is out, Josh Richardson makes a ton of sense. Bradley Beal at 5.4 would scare me on a back-to-back. I mean, it's always scary to play Brad Beal at this point because I keep getting push notifications to my phone that he goes to the locker room and then he plays, 20 minutes in a blowout and he goes to the locker room again, and it's just driving me insane. So Brad Beal really scary. I mean, always has a ceiling and one of the best possible matchups against Sacramento, but kind of scary for me. Zach LaVine is a guy I haven't been playing lately just because his price has been so close to Andrew Wiggins. And, like, how many Wolves can I have on each night? I always play Cat. I play Wiggins. I play Rubio. And, LaVine and Gorgie Dang to me are a cut below because they don't get plays run for them. So, from my perspective, LaVine, I'd rather go up to 700 and get Andrew Wiggins, who is just, like, the guy that's posting up and the guy that is coming off screens and all of that. So Wiggins at 6.5, I like a lot for Minnesota. Devin Booker at 6.7 is just like, I mean, a talented guy playing 40 minutes who is a huge part of his team at 6.7. Just doesn't come around that often. So I've been playing Devin Booker almost every night against Milwaukee. Not the best possible spot, but I think that I'll be playing him again. And then at 6.9, I'll be playing Dwayne Wade if Goran Dragic is out. If Goran Dragic is in, I most likely won't be playing Dwayne Wade at 6.9. And then, the most expensive shooting guard that I think is in play is really DeMar DeRozan, who has a difficult matchup with the Hawks. But, 7.5 is just too cheap for DeMar DeRozan, who is one of the more consistent players in the league, I think, and really usually a pretty good cash game option.
Cool. I will go through small forward, and we'll keep this quick because I think it's actually pretty easy tomorrow. I think there's three guys you're looking in cash, and they are kind of priced as elite, mid, and lower. So we'll kind of run through them. Giannis is at the top. I think he is a great cash game play. We talked, you always want guys who are ball handlers against Phoenix. Even though he's a small forward, Giannis is the point guard of Milwaukee's present and future. And I think he's pretty easy play. I think he's going to crush. I like him in both tournament formats and cash games. Melo's right below him. I'm okay with him in tournaments. Kawhi, questionable. Actually, I'm sorry, he's probable. I'm okay with him in tournaments, but the guy I was hinting at in that mid-range where I think he is in cash game play is Gordon Hayward against Golden State. I can understand it's not a super amazing matchup. But it's no Iggy, and he's the 6'9". He's just severely underpriced and been playing well lately. So I think he's kind of the next guy that you're looking in cash. You can kind of go down, potentially talked into guys. Rudy Gay is probably going to be popular depending on Boogie. He's tournament, I guess, is okay. Otto Porter is, I think, okay for tournaments. I think Omri Caspi is okay for tournaments as well. And there's all these kind of guys that just get like 25 minutes that aren't like super intriguing. But I think the one guy, if you're kind of looking to punt the position, I think is a pretty easy cash play, especially if guys sit, which we think that they might, is Kyle Anderson for the Spurs. He's at 3.7, especially if Kawhi and these guys sit. Crushed last game. He's going to get a lot of minutes probably against a bad New Orleans team. Probably, even if they don't rest him, they could rest kind of their top guys. Kyle Anderson could probably still see a bunch of minutes. So I think that really for me, it's kind of whether I want to pay up for Giannis or whether I want to go to Kyle Anderson is kind of the choice for me. Kick to you for power forward, and then I'll finish it up with center.
Yeah, so starting at the top, I mean, Boogie Cousins, I would consider very questionable. We thought maybe he sat out last game for rest, but he's also been fighting foot, knee issues, and obviously serious attitude, maybe not attitude problems, but certainly attitude problems, but also a fight with his head coach. So at 10.2, like it's certainly intriguing to play Boogie. I just be hard pressed to click him over Wall, given how much Wall has to play for. Going down at power forward, I'm probably not going to play Draymond because he's at Utah and on it back to back. So at 8.1, I think I prefer LMA, assuming that Duncan sits, and assuming that maybe Kawhi sits again. We don't know, but if those two guys sit, certainly LMA at 7.7, and also in that range, Paul Millsap at 8.0. Not the best possible matchup, but Paul Millsap just sometimes it's hard to watch in the first quarter, but seems to always get there one way or another. And that's what happens when you block and you steal and you board and you pass and you make threes. So Paul Millsap at 8.0 makes a lot of sense. I think a bounce back spot for Dirk Nowitzki at 7.1. Shot 4 of 16, I believe, against Denver on Monday, and such big games for the Mavericks as they try to make the playoffs. So really think it's a nice bounce back spot for Dirk in a home game against the Knicks. Like him at 7.1, like him more than I do Favors at 6.7 against Golden State. Just doesn't have to go through Favors on Utah. Like we saw Rodney Hood get 30 points in the first half last game, and maybe it'll be Gordon Hayward or maybe Gobert will emerge from his slumber or something like that. Like it doesn't always go through Favors. So I prefer Dirk at 7.1. Porzingis, the Porzingis at 6.5 intrigues me because his minutes have leveled off in the 30 to 33 range, whereas before we couldn't say that. So I think even in a lost season, even in a man matchup, I think Porzingis at 6.5 is too cheap. Gorgie Dang and Julius Randle are already mentioned. I mean, Gorgie Dang is fine, and he's almost always near the top of the models on FantasyLabs, and I get why. I just, like I said before, like how many Wolves can I play every night? And Gorgie Dang usually ends up drawing the short end for me. And on Julius Randle, a guy that I absolutely love, I play all the time, but probably not going to use him against the Heat just for matchup purposes. But at 5.8, I'd be kind of surprised if he didn't at least like meet value. I just don't see a huge ceiling in this matchup with a slow-paced Heat. If Zach Randolph sits, I think J. Michael at 5.0 makes a ton of sense. And they've had some really, really tough matchups, finally softening up for Memphis. So J. Michael, if Zebo sits at 5.0, is way too cheap. And then the two punts that I have written down here are Dwight Powell if he starts at 3.4 for the Mavs, which would be pretty thin. I doubt I'd really be looking to go there too hard. And then David West, if it's no Duncan and maybe no Kawhi, maybe no some other guys, that David West at 3.8 against New Orleans could be in play.
Cool. I finished up with center. And I, again, kind of like small forward, I think it's fairly easy to kind of identify where the value is here. At the top, we have Hassan Whiteside and Karl Towns. They're the two most expensive options on DK. They're 8.4 apiece. Towns, I think, is the obvious cash play. Whiteside, I love in tournaments for that exact reason. Both elite upside. Towns is a higher floor, so I get cash. But yeah, I'm fine with playing Whiteside in tournaments to kind of pivot off the high ownership that I would expect for Towns. I'm fine with playing both of them on DK where you can play both. I think it's great potential option. DeAndre's kind of in the same spot as Whiteside. I think he is a pretty nice pivot in tournament. Probably not going to get a ton of minutes here. It's going to be around 30, but I think he could fill up the stat sheet in just 30 minutes. So as a pivot down from Towns and Whiteside in tournaments, and probably even a little bit lower exposure, I like having Jordan in some tournaments. Marcin Gortat, I think, is kind of the late tournament play if you want to pivot down from Townsend at 8.4, or if you just you like your team and you don't have that much cash and you kind of end up in the 6-7 range. Gortat, if Boogie doesn't play, I think he's an elite cash game play. If Boogie does play, it probably moves him for tournament only for me, but I still think that he is kind of a nice play, going to get a lot of minutes in a high-paced game here. Al Horford, I think, is a tournament play. We're kind of going down. Rudy Gobert, I think, is a really interesting tournament play. I think he's underpriced here at 5.6. The opponent rank on DraftKings is bad, but his opponent plus minus is not as bad. And I think he's been playing well, so I think he's kind of a sneaky tournament play. Probably going to be low owned, especially compared to these top guys. So I think he's kind of a intriguing, sneaky tournament play for sure. Denver is going to be interesting. Kind of depends on what happens with Nurkic, but Jokic is here at 5.6. Probably not much of a value, probably not that interesting, but we've seen him go off before. So tournament, I can understand. Rolo's kind of in the same boat. Robin Lopez, every once in a while he'll go off for 50 DK points just kind of randomly. So why not? Greg Monroe is playing Phoenix, so I don't know. Honestly, I don't have a super strong take about Greg Monroe other than like Milwaukee's playing Phoenix tomorrow. So I don't know. I mean, Greg Monroe's only playing like 20 minutes, so I'm probably not going to play him in really any format, but who knows? Kind of going down, it's these cheaper guys. I think the guys that we're kind of looking at is for Sacramento here, Willie Cauley-Stein and Costa Koufos. If Boogie is out, I think they are intriguing. I think Koufos would be the guy that I'm looking at. Not only has he shown to have the higher plus minus in Boogie's absence, but he's also $500 cheaper, so you get the savings on DraftKings. He's probably the guy I'm looking at. Cauley-Stein is probably the tournament guy I'm looking at. And then kind of the only other guy that I'm looking in that range, I guess you could maybe go Alexis Ajinça or a Sheik in the kind of like the really bargain rate and get San Antonio. I'm not super interested in that. The other guy on the other side of that game I'm looking at is Boban. He's at 3.7. If they decide to rest guys and kind of roll him out there, he's just a monster, and he can crush in kind of limited minutes. And if for some reason, if he got a lot of minutes, I think he could kind of just destroy his value. So I think he's kind of the play if you want to punt below 4K. That's it. I think we are done. That's the slate's 9 games. And kind of a quick note, this is going to be Adam and I's last full pod of the NBA season. Yeah, say it ain't so.
No.
Yeah. We are actually – so Thursday's pod with Jay and Pete that you guys listen to is going to be our last full pod of the NBA season. Starting, Sunday, we are going to move to quick hits only just because we are going to roll out heavy on the MLB pods starting next week with MLB season. So we'll still have NBA pods, but they're going to be quick hits only, not the full breakdown. So this is it for us, Adam. This is our last one of the season. It was a good season.
I mean, I've only done like 3, so I mean, I barely got to wet my beak.
I know. Well, yeah, I know. It has been a kind of a short run, but a glorious one nonetheless. But yeah, it's kind of the dog days of NBA, as we've mentioned a lot in this pod. But it was a good season. I mean, it was fun to do the full length pods. I'm kind of glad just because I'm doing PGA and MLB. Especially, I'll be doing MLB 3 times a week. We'll have it 4 times a week. I'll be doing it 3 times a week with Jay. Kind of glad to have one less pot off my plate just because it's a lot. But it's been good. Obviously, NBA is my favorite sport, so it's been fun to talk NBA for sure.
Yeah, no, it's hard to be. I can't imagine, like, I'm so deep in NBA. I can't even imagine thinking about another sport right now. So, yeah, it's certainly hard to be on top of everything.
Yeah, it is, but it's good. I mean, we have a lot of really, really sharp, great guys. Like I got off the PGA pod before this one with Colin, Davey, and Pete, CSU Rams. So obviously we have sharp guys that I can kind of lean on, especially in golf where I kind of host that one more than offer opinions. But yeah, been a good run. So yeah, we'll end it there. Thanks for listening as always. Thanks for watching if you're on YouTube. Good luck tomorrow in Wednesday's slate. And yeah, thanks for watching this year. We'll be back with the audio version of Quick Hits, but we appreciate your support and listening, and we'll talk to you guys on the road.